Well, joining us from Washington, D.C. is David DeRoche. He's a professor at Thayer Marshall Institute. Good to have you with us. So at this point, it's been widely reported that the U.S. is preparing to attack Iran. There have been various scenarios put out there. Is it clear that what the strategic goal, not just a tactical goal of what the targets might be, what is the strategic goal of any attack on Iran in terms of the military plans?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the United States generally, it's very rare to see an actual strategy. Usually we have tactics, and they're usually in response to events. So the issues that the United States and that Iran's neighbors have with Iran's have been there for a long time. What really sparked this current confrontation was the spontaneous Iranian protests and then the way in which the protesters were massacred. So that led President Trump to say he would do something to support the protesters. He obviously didn't do that while they were being shot. And I think this is, that's what precipitated this here. That's why he started sending assets to the region, because we didn't have any when he made those remarks. So I honestly think that all this talk about enrichment, about the missile inventory and all that, that predated the Iranian uprising. Basically, I think that the moves we're seeing here are to restore the president's credibility so that he can't be negatively compared with, say, President Obama's red line over Syrian chemical weapons use.
It's difficult to imagine the country going to war just to restore or preserve the image of one man, albeit the president, as important as he is in the U.S. political system. What is the rationale? Do you think there is a rationale that has been sufficiently sold to the American public? I mean, the whole talk about protesters, with all due respect, people in this part of the world will look at how there have been protests. There were protests going on for 2 years in Gaza with all kinds of human rights organizations saying protesters, unarmed protesters were being shot, UN reports coming out. We didn't see the US, of course, amass an armada for that. What is the rationale? Is there a rationale that's been presented, a convincing one to the American public, for this level of military engagement?
Well, it's important. The short answer is there hasn't been a rationale presented for war, but the force package doesn't imply war. It implies a one-off strike, rather, as we had in January, or June. And that didn't seem to upset the American political calculus too much. So there's no ground forces as part of this, no amphibious forces, nothing that would suggest that we put anybody in Iran for any length of time. What we're seeing looks to me like a force for a strike on limited capabilities, which would be air defenses, nuclear sites, missile sites, and some of the regime figures involved in the massacre of the Iranian protesters. And then the rest of the package seems to be a deterrent package to prevent Iran
David,
from carrying out its threats.
How would we know which specific individuals have been? I mean, you're right, there are UN reports out there which have said there has been excessive use of force with protesters. But when you talk about individuals, that this attack would take out individuals who were associated in the massacre of protesters, there's been no judicial process to establish that, right? Just to be clear and factual for the audience.
Yeah. No, there is no judicial protest. And I believe that when President Trump made his remarks, he probably turned to the military and said, all right, who are these people? And the military said, we haven't been tracking those. That's a new target set. So that will not be something that many people will agree with. But presumably, there are detailed studies of who is in the Basij, which is the popular militia associated with the Revolutionary Guard that historically has been involved in doing that. But I suspect that there will be, if these actions are taken, there'll be many people who are unhappy with what happens. And, the nearest historical analog is in the initial American NATO actions to defend the Kosovars, the Kosovar Muslims, against possible Serbian genocide. Initially, the American action was targeted just at the Serbian police, but that was not sufficient to stop the actions, the genocidal actions taken by the Serbian regimes. And by the end of 60 days, we destroyed every bridge in Belgrade and the power grid in Serbia. So this is a difficult factor. But again, there are other targets that I think that will be taken. And there is, an Iranian threat to close the Strait of Hormuz, to damage the economic infrastructure of the GCC states, Azerbaijan and other neighboring states. That has always been there, and no regional leader or American president is satisfied with that. So
Right.
there's a lot of things here.
Oh, no, I'm sure we'll have a lot of time to come back and talk about them too. Thanks so much for now, David DeRoche there, former Pentagon Director of Arabian Peninsula Affairs.
Thank you.